Hi and welcome to the Soundschi Land show where everybody's upside down. We have a dog here. Don't sniff the microphone. Just go away.
Every day is upside down in Soundschi Land.
So, I'm here with Ellen Grow. I love your name.
Thanks.
It makes me so calm. We met here at the Bali Handstand Retreat. And we were talking about her experience in a circus school in China, where she was for 18 months. And so we had a really interesting conversation. So I thought it would be nice to talk about it in front of camera.
Yeah.
But just to give the people some context of who you are and what you do, like, are you a hand balancer? Are you a hand-to-hand acrobat? Give a little bit of your story, like who you are.
Yeah. Cool. I'm definitely a bit of everything, as much as I can be. I love handstands, probably the most of everything. But I also really love flying and do as much partner acro and group acro stuff as I can. But, it's the same with anything. Working with people, it's hard to lock people down consistently.
Yeah.
If you're not in a show with them. So when I'm not working with people for acro and stuff, then I still have handstands to do and aren't just stuck not doing anything.
So it's more like a filler thing.
No, but it's more consistent than the acro is, I would say.
Got it. Yeah. How long have you been handstanding for?
A really long time. I was one of those kids who just did like cartwheels and handstands everywhere. I remember when I was about 8 years old, my mum took me to the beach and walked next to me, and I did 55 cartwheels in a row down the beach just because that was my idea of fun.
Cool.
So then after that, she let me start gymnastics. I was just doing like recreational gymnastics an hour a week. Mm-hmm. And in that, I learnt about handstands and started getting really addicted to them from like a young age and just kept doing them. Yeah.
And then you went to China when you were 17? Is that right?
So in Australia, we graduate when we're 17 from high school. Mm-hmm. Now I think it's 18, but back then it was 17 for me. Mm-hmm. And there was one of my trainers actually I was doing youth circus at the time. Mm-hmm. And one of my trainers was going over to the school in Beijing, and he convinced his friend, who convinced my boyfriend at the time, who convinced me, and so the four of us all went over together to train there because it seemed like a good place to train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how was your experience?
It was really interesting. It was really good for me. I loved China so much. The people were amazing. The food is amazing. Language, culture, everything. I loved it. And it was really good for me. A lot of what I wanted from it, because my options at the time were to go to NICA in Melbourne or China, I heard about from this guy. And that was kind of, most Australians at that time were going to NICA to sort of further their career. Mm-hmm. There weren't as many people going to international schools and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I really wanted to train outside of the little Australian circus bubble. And so that's why I thought China would be really good. And it was great for that. I sort of was so outside my comfort zone and learnt to live out of home and cook for myself and speak a new language and all of these kind of things. The training itself was not the best for me personally because I was so young, and a lot of the things that my body has, like super hyperextended elbows,
which I love,
strong carrier angle and closed shoulders, and just like a lot of little funny things that technique can really help with that I didn't understand at that time. And the Chinese style of training is very much just like, all right, do it again, I'll hold you here, do it again, hold longer. And so I got a lot stronger, but not necessarily in a very efficient kind of way.
Yeah.
So I think that school would be really good for me now, like having done a lot more training. If someone just wanted to take 6 months out from their life and go and live at a place where there's no distractions, you're on campus training all day, every day, it's amazing for that. Or if you wanted to create a new act and you had all of the tools to do that, but there's not a lot of emphasis on creativity or creation of new movements or acts or anything like that. So it's more, I think it's really good if you know what you're going for. Yeah.
How did the day-to-day training look like in terms of warm-up, main part, and cool-down?
Okay, so the Chinese way of training is super intense. I'm sure you've seen Chinese acrobats.
Yeah.
Like the kids who can do like 50 handstand push-ups and stuff. But the school that I was at was mainly a high school. It's called Beijing International Art School.
Okay.
And so they actually have like wushu and dance and fine arts and all sorts of things. Acrobatics is just a part of that. And then they have a performing troupe as well. And they opened up to international students quite a few years ago, actually. But in the first few years, they started getting adults coming to train at the school, and they trained them the same way they train the 8-year-old Chinese kids, and realized that they pull too many hamstrings and break people doing that to fully grown Western adults who don't have a background in doing everything. And so now it's quite separate, the training program.
Okay.
And so there's like 2-3 rooms where the foreign students train, and they've got their own specific trainers. And so classes run from 8:30 in the morning until 11:30, and then you have a 3-hour lunch break in which most people nap. And then 2:30 till 4:30. So it's actually not too many hours. But in the foreign student department, they also often take on a troupe of younger kids from overseas. They regularly have Russian troops, like from one specific school. They go over and stay for a couple of years at a time. When I was there, some of them had been there 7 years. And like 15-year-old kids who had been there for 7 years already. Incredible.
Wouldn't you think they're done by then?
Pretty close to it. They went back and started performing full-time, like just after I left. But, you know, holding one arm, moving through shapes, pops, like at 15 years old. It was incredible.
Sounds like Kiev.
So they have those. They had some from Myanmar while I was there, and then after I left, they had Cambodian kids. And so those kids, they train the same way as they train the Chinese.
Okay.
And so those kids have classes from 6 in the morning until 7:30 before breakfast, and then the same hours as the foreign students.
Oh, so that's
and then
addition.
Nighttime classes as well from 6 till 8:30. And so the space is actually available at those times. And when I was there, they were really lovely and let us train with the Russian kids in the mornings and night if we wanted to. So that's what I did. And so that was Monday, Tuesday, morning and evening, Wednesdays. But the kids had classes, like school, 1 day a week. And then Thursday, Friday. So it was like 4 days and then 2 half days, Wednesday, Saturday, and then Sundays off.
Okay.
So it was a lot, but...
And how was the content of the training? Like, what did you do for warm-up? What did you do as main part?
So we didn't do a lot of actual warm-up.
Okay.
Which, a lot of the stuff I've learnt since then would change how I would train if I went back. But the way that the Chinese kids do it and the way the trainers then just teach is just, you kind of just go in and start doing, like, your splits and stuff.
Okay. So just sit in their splits or
so they actually have ballet bars, and then you do some hamstring stretches, and then a little bit of like Chinese torture, laying on the ground. They like stretch you, middle splits, and then over splits holds, and then we would like wedge ourselves in between the wall and the ballet bar and do like leg mounts, like standing against the wall, and the teacher would come and like pull your leg a bit more and that kind of stuff.
Okay, so more like heavy stretching before the class starts.
So that was like the first probably 45 minutes of class was like flexibility. And then we did handstand basics, so like all your tuck-ups and straddles, all those kind of things, holds, endurance was next. And then we had like a little 15-minute break and then went to your second class. Originally I was doing tumbling while I was there for my second class, but it was a little bit rough on my body because I just tumble on carpet. And I wasn't doing enough conditioning and stabilizing and a bit too much of that. And so it was sort of messing with my back and stuff. So I didn't do too much tumbling. I then changed my second class to more handstands. And so that was when I started working on my one arms and stuff like that. More presses, more holds, handstand walking for conditioning at the end. And then lunchtime, our teacher was really lovely. We had the best teacher. She's so sweet. But she was a juggler. And we had her for hand-to-hand. So she didn't know exactly how things were supposed to work, but to kind of compensate for that, she took us down to the Chinese training space in lunchtime when they were all resting and let us use the safety lines. And helped us on there for an hour, which was really nice. And then at 2:30 we would go back up to the foreign student classrooms and do more hand-to-hand drills, work on whatever tricks we wanted to work on. And then the last session, sometimes I would do more handstands. And then at night I would just go in and do my own flex and handstands. Yeah, it was a lot of flex and handstands and acro. Yeah.
It sounds, the way you describe it, it sounds very similar to Kiev, actually.
I would say it would be from, what I've heard.
Except for the hours weren't that many.
Yeah.
Like the regular hours. We only had 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then some of the students train more in the afternoon, or they have other classes during the year.
Yeah.
Like artistic dancing and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it sounds like, from what you told me earlier, is that the technique didn't play a high role or wasn't an important role.
No, and I think a really good example of that was I could actually hold a one-arm handstand a bit by the end of when I was there. But I didn't...
And before that?
Before that, I could hold 2 arms pretty comfortably, but not great shape.
Okay.
For like a minute was probably like there. And yeah, so that got stronger, like I could hold longer and stuff. And then I was working on my one arms, and the teacher would just put me in the position and then kind of just lightly spot and hold, and then other side and rest. And we would do that on repeat. And so the way that I learnt one arms was kind of just by doing it, and I had no understanding of how I was balancing or what I needed to do if I couldn't balance or how to fix it. It was just drilled into me enough that eventually I could just hold. But if someone asked me what I was doing, I couldn't have told them.
Yeah.
And I could just hold here. Like, if you put my legs here, I wouldn't have been able to hold. You know, like it was, I knew one shape, and it was just from doing it on repeat.
Yeah. Did they give you any feedback after sets?
No, they would yell at you in the sets.
Okay, so more like push or...
And yeah, usually it'd just be like, no, hold, don't come down, point your toes, push up.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of just like it would cycle through those ones.
Yeah. Or like physical cues? Would they give you physical cues?
It depended on the trainers. Some of them were really good. If you had a hand balancer as a trainer, they would know a little bit more technique. But I had a really interesting conversation with one of the trainers once who was brilliant. He was one of the ones who could put me and like tell me what I needed to do. But he was mostly retired. But he came in specifically to teach these little kids from Myanmar, 2 kids, brothers, who they went from nothing to being able to planche and fall over extended hollow back in a year because of this one trainer. And I was chatting to him about it. I was like, aren't you worried about their technique? Because, you know, they were really chest out. And he was like, no, as they get stronger, it'll straighten up. And so that was just the way that he saw it, was that, and it did. They got really good.
Yeah.
So I guess if you start when you're 5.
Well, yeah, there's not a lot you can do wrong. Or let's say you have more room to make errors. It was at that age.
It was incredible seeing the transition, actually, especially in their flexibility, which I guess probably only works at that age. Like, they went from never having stretched before, they were just regular kids, to within 6 months, you would walk in at the end of the day and they'd be mucking around chatting, one of them would be playing a game or something, and just in middle splits, because it was so comfortable that, Like, they just didn't even notice that that's what they were doing. It was really bizarre to see that change. And you're like, well, I guess it works, but yeah.
Yeah. How did your body hold up with the whole training?
Better than I would have expected, actually. So my biggest problem was that it drilled in bad habits. So I have a tendency to be super locked in my hip flexors. I have a sway back, just always have since I was a kid. And it's gotten a lot better now that I know how to work on it. But while I was there, I didn't know any of those drills. And because of the repetitive nature of the training, it would instead just any natural tendencies that your body has, it kind of like cemented them in.
Yeah.
So like my back got quite sore. And they were trying to get me to do back bending stuff, and it was just so sore in my lower back. And now I know that's because my hip flexors were too tight and parts of my glutes weren't working and my shoulders were really tight, and so all the bend was going to my back and I wasn't doing enough core. But at the time I was like, it hurts my back, you know, like, so I didn't get particularly injured, but my body wasn't where it should have been, if that makes sense. Yeah, there were just more issues that were long term. Yeah.
And so this was how many years ago?
This was 10 years ago, actually, that I went there.
And so what has happened in between? Have you learned something?
Oh my gosh, so much.
Technically, I mean, in terms of your handstands.
Yeah.
Have you evolved technically? Is there anything you've found out that you do differently now?
Oh my god, everything. I would say almost everything is completely different, actually.
Oh, wow.
So I'll start from the start. Straight after China, the guy I was working with went to school in Montreal. I didn't get into, but
damn.
It was definitely for the best, actually. We were at very different points in what we wanted, and he's done incredibly out of that, so it was perfect. So then I didn't have anyone to train with. I was just in Brisbane. There's a good circus community there, but it's a lot of people are already in performing groups and stuff, so I was kind of mostly training on my own. I kept doing that for a while, trained with people on and off, but they kept getting into shows and going to schools and that kind of thing. I took a couple of years off. I went to uni.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you did nothing?
I was teaching aerials and stuff just as like my part-time job when I was at uni. And I could still handstand, but I definitely wasn't training properly. And then towards the end of when I was at uni, I was like, okay, this has been good. I want to do this academic stuff one day, but I wanted to give circus one more go first.
Yeah.
And so towards the end of that was when I met Chris and everyone in the Australian circus community a bit more, and started really working on my technique properly. Alex Mizzen is based in Brisbane now, and she's just a stunning hand balancer. And so she taught me a lot of how to actually align my body and what drills I needed to be doing for that. Rhiannon, of course.
Yeah.
And Dan Lydiard. And I haven't done intense, like full-time training at a school or an institution again, but I've done a lot of workshops and intensives where I can, and then taken that and just trained it by myself.
Yeah.
And researched online as much as I can and trying to get different physio exercises. I have an amazing osteo who helped me like work out half of the muscles in my shoulders that weren't doing anything.
Interesting.
I was handstanding from like my traps, and that was it. It's like,
Okay.
And so now I can use all of these muscles and this one. So basically everything has changed in how I train, but it's definitely for the best.
Your line is very unique. Like I said, you have a typical acro line. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
But you're so straight.
Oh, really? It doesn't feel it. It still feels like there's a long way to go.
Well, it seems like you have such a hyperextended elbow. And like...
They're the bane of my existence.
Yeah, but they look beautiful. I love them.
Yeah, that's actually been probably the hardest thing for me, is this carrier angle. I find when I have my arms out straight, this sits back, and so the weight always wants to sit in the heel of my palm.
Ah, okay.
Because this just doesn't
Yeah.
go in a straight line from my shoulder.
How do you compensate for that?
Wrapping as much as I can and then really trying to push through here. But you'll see in a handstand, it always looks a little bit like my shoulders are closed.
It does.
Which, I mean, they're not
Yeah.
great, but even when I lay on the ground, like this just kind of sits off of the ground.
Yeah.
So that's just my ongoing battle, that one.
So generally you try to hollow your chest.
Yeah, all of the nice technique
yeah.
things that everyone says. And then
Yeah.
slowly it is getting better.
Well, it looks really nice. I like your handstand. It has a very unique style.
Oh, that's nice to hear, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no.
I was gonna
there
say,
was
what
one
am I doing
thing.
at the moment?
There was one thing I actually wanted to ask you. Perform now, right?
Yeah, that's why I was like, I should.
Yeah. So, do you do that full time now? Do you perform full time, or
It's
what
definitely
is that?
it's the closest thing I have to a full-time job.
Okay.
But so I'm with a really small independent company in Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
They're called One Fell Swoop.
Mm-hmm.
There's only 7 of us in the show, the main one that we've been doing lately.
Yeah.
And 2 of them are the directors. They're in the show and they direct and run the whole company. It's incredible. The show is called By a Thread, and it's actually an aerial show. I'm in mainly as the flyer, and they chuck me onto the rope and stuff like that.
Nice.
It's really fun and really lovely. So we have that touring kind of intermittently when we can get shows.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the time I just do freelance gigs, and usually I'll go up to Brisbane again, back to where my family is for Christmas time. There's like lots of work up there at the Gold Coast and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really lovely.
And is that something you want to get more into?
Yeah, so we're hoping to pick up a few more tours next year. Hopefully maybe head to Adelaide again. We did Adelaide this year, which was really lovely. Yeah, and then we've got some more. We did a little bit of regional touring this year as well in Victoria in Australia, and we've got some more in other states and territories next year, which will be really lovely because it's nice to get to just all these different places that don't often get circus and reach those crowds.
Amazing. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Thank you. It's been lovely.
Yeah. I wish you all the luck for your future.
Thanks.
I'll put her Instagram links down below, as always, so you can check her out and give her a follow. And other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next Monday. What was my line again? It's never too late to do what you love.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah,
I like that.
True. But I just changed it and I keep forgetting it. But yeah, you know it. See you next Monday.